Lost in the sands, kingdoms swallowed by deserts. The kingdom of Ubar, Atlantis of the sands. As the soft wind whispers through the dunes of southern Oman, legends of a city long lost to the desert begin to drift into the listener's mind. This is Ubar, sometimes called Iram of the Pillars, a kingdom so rich in lore that even the great travelers like Marco Polo and Lawrence of Arabia sought its trace. Ancient texts speak of towers rising from the sand, bustling markets brimming with frankincense, and a people once so wealthy they were said to rival kings. Ubar's story begins not in the ruins, but in whispers. The city is mentioned in the Quran as a land of towering columns, inhabited by the tribe of Ad, whose hubris brought divine destruction. For centuries, it remained a tale, a myth, an Arabian Atlantis. Yet, in the early 1990s, satellite imaging revealed a faint network of caravan routes converging on a single point in the empty quarter, the Rub al-Khali. Excavations unearthed the remains of a fortress-like structure, collapsed into a deep limestone sinkhole. Was this the fabled Ubar? While scholars debate, the image remains. A kingdom that traded in gold and incense, that prospered from the demands of gods and emperors alike. Its decline is whispered to have come from greed, from water wells drying, from sand swallowing stone. And so, as night falls and sand continues its endless drift, the memory of Ubar sleeps beneath the desert, waiting to be dreamt of again. The Garamantes of the Sahara. Deep beneath the blazing sun of the central Sahara lay the remains of a once thriving desert civilization, the Garamantes. To the Romans, they were fierce warriors riding in chariots over the sands. To the modern world, they are a riddle wrapped in dry silence. But for centuries, they flourished in what now seems like an inhospitable expanse. Centered in what is today southwestern Libya, the Garamantes built their kingdom on an underground water system known as Fogaras. These ingenious channels tapped into fossil water buried beneath the desert and allowed them to cultivate crops, establish towns, and trade with the Mediterranean world. In their capital, Garama, life thrived, homes, markets, and even baths bloomed in the sun. Yet, time is unkind to even the clever. As the water sources dwindled, so did the people. The desert crept closer, erasing their roads, their voices, and their dreams. Today, only the skeletal remains of stone settlements and long dry canals remain. The silence of the Sahara has reclaimed its secrets, and the Garamantes sleep within the sand, lost but not forgotten. The Meroitic Kingdom of Kush. South of Egypt, where the Nile flows strong and stubborn, rose the Kingdom of Kush, and in its later days, the Meroitic civilization. Its pyramids are smaller than Egypt's, but they dot the Nubian desert like forgotten jewels. Their sharp shadows cast stories across the sand. The Meroitic people spoke a language that remains mostly undeciphered. They developed their own script, elegant and looping, used on stele and temple walls. They traded iron, gold, and ivory, and had queens known as Kandakes, powerful rulers who led armies and negotiated treaties. Their capital, Meroe, was a city of craftsmen, scholars, and priests. Yet, as centuries passed, trade routes shifted. The desert advanced. Roman interest faded. And with no Rosetta Stone to guide us, much of Meroe remains cloaked in mystery. The wind that once carried prayers through temple columns now carries only dust. Still, beneath that dust, the heart of a kingdom still beats, if only in dreams. The Nabateans and Petra's hidden power. In the red cliffs of Jordan, where stone bleeds into sunset, lies Petra, the crown jewel of the Nabatean kingdom. Tourists now walk its dusty paths, but once it echoed with the calls of merchants and the clink of spices being weighed. The Nabateans were master traders, carving a city from rock and drawing wealth from the incense trade that stretched from Arabia to Rome. Petra was their marvel, a place where tombs and temples were sculpted directly into stone, where water was funneled through secret canals, and where cultures blended under desert stars. They resisted conquest for centuries. Even Rome respected their autonomy for a time. But time is relentless. Trade routes faded, Roman grip tightened, and Petra was abandoned. For centuries, the desert held it in secrecy until rediscovery in the 19th century. Even now, as one enters through the Sikh, a narrow canyon that opens into the grand facade of Al-Khazneh, the treasury, it feels like stepping back into a dream. Petra breathes softly at night, a lullaby of a forgotten kingdom etched in sandstone. The lost oases of Libya. Scattered across the Libyan desert are oases that once cradled thriving kingdoms. Ghadames, Agila, and Kufra were not just stops for weary travelers. They were centers of learning, trade, and resilience. Ghadames, the pearl of the desert, housed whitewashed homes designed to resist the heat. Its alleys curled like the patterns of ancient scrolls. In Agila, the Berber language was preserved for centuries, a linguistic relic in a sea of change. Kufra served as a gateway between Black Africa and the Arab world, its waters drawing caravans like stars to sailors. But time, war, and climate change conspired. Some oases dried up, others were abandoned in haste. The winds came to reclaim what was borrowed. Today, only ruins whisper their tales, and a stillness hangs over the wells once surrounded by song. The Mamluks of the desert trade routes. Though often remembered for their military prowess in Egypt, some Mamluks governed desert trade cities, orchestrating the flow of gold, salt, and silk across harsh terrain. Cities like Dumat al-Jandal and Tama served as crucial nodes in a vast network. Protected by fortresses and sustained by wells, these hubs buzzed with life. Traders, scholars, and mystics mingled beneath the desert sun. Markets brimmed with goods from distant lands. Stories passed hands like currency. But as seafaring grew and empires rose, these routes became obsolete. The Mamluks' desert influence waned, and their fortresses stood guard over emptiness. Still, beneath layers of sand, the stones remember. The Empire of Kanem-Bornu. East of Lake Chad, the Kanem-Bornu Empire reigned over the Sahel for over 1,000 years. Its roots dug deep into pre-Islamic tradition, and its branches stretched into Islamic scholarship and trans-Saharan commerce. My kings ruled from the desert edge, blending the wisdom of Africa and Arabia. They sent scholars to Mecca, traded slaves and horses, and maintained sprawling armies. But shifting trade and colonial encroachment fractured their power. The empire splintered, and nomads wandered over forgotten capitals. Yet, in the wind that skims across Lake Chad, stories still sail, of kings, camels, and desert suns. The Tuareg Confederacy. Nomads of elegance and mystery, the Tuareg carved their domain not in walls but in wind. Their confederacy stretched across the Sahara, linking trade towns like Timbuktu, Agadez, and Ghat. Clad in indigo and mounted on camels, they guided caravans and preserved ancient poems. Though not a kingdom in the traditional sense, their socio-political order held firm for centuries. Colonialism, rebellion, and modern borders tried to sever their threads. But the Tuareg spirit endures, their drums still echoing beneath desert stars, keeping memory alive through music and motion. The Tubu kingdoms of the Central Sahara. In the Tibesti Mountains, the Tubu people once ruled fiercely and freely. Their kingdoms, though modest in stone, were rich in resilience. They fought off invaders, herded livestock, and traversed sands like sailors. Known for endurance and independence, they thrived in an unforgiving landscape. Oral histories recall warrior queens and battles lost to time. Though few structures remain, the Tubu soul remains etched into the mountains themselves. The desert forgets quickly, but it never fully erases. Forgotten caravan cities of the silk and sand. Between the great empires of East and West lay the nameless cities that bridged them. Caravanserais, oases, and market towns once pulsed with life along trade routes forgotten by time. Places like Ulfor, Hegra, and Zubara rose with the rhythm of camel bells. Spices, silk, stories, and secrets passed hands in dusty courtyards. But when ships replaced caravans, silence took over. Now their ruins lie quiet beneath stars, visited only by wind and wonder. Their legacy is not in stone, but in the very idea that connection, no matter how remote, once made the world whole. Sunken sovereignties, kingdoms beneath the sea. The kingdom of Dwarka, beneath the Arabian Sea. As the tides brush gently against the western coast of India, whispers rise from beneath the waves. Beneath the Arabian Sea, off the coast of Gujarat, lies one of the most enigmatic underwater sites known to history, the lost kingdom of Dwarka, a city said to have been founded by Lord Krishna himself. Ancient texts, especially the Mahabharata, speak of a city with golden palaces, broad avenues, and a layout so majestic that it rivaled the grandeur of the heavens. Dwarka, according to legend, was built by divine architects and stood as a jewel by the sea, until the ocean reclaimed it. For years, this was dismissed as pure mythology. But in the early 2000s, marine archaeologists working with sonar scanners uncovered evidence of what appeared to be massive stone structures under the sea, symmetrical, linear patterns resembling city planning, submerged 120 feet underwater. Stone anchors, walls, and even step-like features suggested a thriving harbor city lost to time and tide. Imagine, long ago, people walking through streets filled with music, trade, and prayer, unaware that one day, the sea would rise and swallow it whole. Whether Krishna's city or not, the sunken ruins of Dwarka remain a silent testament to civilizations that danced too close to the waves. Yonaguni, Japan's mysterious underwater monument. Far in the south of Japan, where the waters turn a luminous blue and ocean currents sway with ancient rhythm, divers discovered something unusual near the island of Yonaguni. Beneath the sea, there lies a sprawling series of massive stone structures, terraces, platforms, and what seem like steps carved into the seabed. To some, it looked unmistakably like a pyramid, built not by nature, but by hands with vision. The Yonaguni Monument, as it's now called, stretches across 490 feet, with walls and ledges that echo the grandeur of a forgotten city. Marine geologist Mosoki Kimura led the exploration, suggesting that these formations were man-made and dated back over 10,000 years, a claim that would rewrite the history of human civilization. Others argue it's simply the work of nature, carved by oceanic currents and tectonic forces. But as you close your eyes and imagine standing beneath the sea, among towering blocks that align so perfectly, you begin to wonder, what if this truly was a kingdom, lost before history had a chance to record it? There are carvings, symbols, and even something that looks like a road. Could this be a remnant of a civilization erased by a cataclysm, perhaps during the last ice age melt? The sea guards her secrets well. The Atlantean myth and its inspirations. No tale of sunken kingdoms is complete without the most famous of all, Atlantis, the fabled city described by Plato more than 2,000 years ago. According to his writings, Atlantis was an island nation, larger than Libya and Asia combined, positioned beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. It was rich, powerful, and magnificently advanced. The Atlanteans built rings of water and land around their capital. Their temples gleamed with orichalcum, and their warriors had tamed both land and sea. And then, in a single night and day of misfortune, it disappeared, swallowed by the sea. Many believe Plato used the story as an allegory, a warning against hubris and empire. But for centuries, explorers searched for the truth, from the waters of the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, and even Antarctica. Each sunken ruin, each mysterious underwater formation, was once proclaimed as Atlantis. While we may never find a literal Atlantis, its echo exists in countless lost civilizations, those who rose high, only to be humbled by the forces of nature. Atlantis is more than a place. It's an idea that even the greatest of societies are vulnerable to the deep silence of the sea. The Lycians of the Turkish coast. Along the turquoise waters of southwestern Turkey, beneath craggy cliffs and wind-brushed pines, lies the realm of the Lycians, a forgotten maritime kingdom that once ruled these coasts with independence and style. Unlike other ancient cultures, the Lycians practiced a form of democracy, even electing leaders through councils. Their rock-cut tombs, carved high into the mountains, still gaze out over the sea. But many of their harbor cities, Samina, Apoli, and parts of Kekava, now lie partially or fully underwater. This was not a myth, but a slow drowning, caused by earthquakes, tectonic shifts, and the ever-encroaching sea. Today, visitors glide in boats over the sunken city of Kekava, looking down through clear blue water at stairs leading into nothingness, doorways that once welcomed life now welcoming only fish and time. The Lycians believed in honoring the dead with high tombs, but in the end, their cities were pulled down low into the sea's embrace. And yet, the sea preserved them, frozen in beauty and still whispering the name of a people who built dignity into every stone. The drowned cities of the Black Sea. Beneath the surface of the Black Sea, something astonishing lies hidden. Entire landscapes, buildings, and settlements, now claimed by brackish waters. This isn't the result of a single catastrophe, but of a dramatic sea level rise that happened around 7,600 years ago. According to researchers, the Black Sea was once a much smaller freshwater lake. Then, a sudden flood from the Mediterranean burst through the Bosphorus Strait, raising sea levels by hundreds of feet in a matter of months. Villages, farms, and towns along its coast were wiped out. This event may have even inspired the biblical story of Noah's flood, or similar flood myths from Mesopotamia and Greece. As scientists lower submersibles into these waters, they found tools, pottery, and wooden houses preserved in low oxygen layers. Each artifact tells a quiet tale of people who lived, traded, laughed, and prayed, never suspecting that their world would vanish beneath waves so suddenly and so absolutely. In silence, the Black Sea holds a lost world, whispering to the curious who dare to listen. The lost port of Heraklion, Egypt's forgotten gateway. Before Alexandria rose to prominence, Egypt's grand maritime gateway to the Mediterranean was the fabled city of Heraklion, known to the Egyptians as Thonis. This port was once bustling with ships, temples, and trade. It stood proudly at the mouth of the Nile, welcoming traders from Greece, Phoenicia, and beyond. Statues of pharaohs loomed over harbors, and gold glimmered in marketplaces filled with spices, scrolls, and sacred relics. Then, over time, it vanished. For centuries, the city of Heraklion was thought to be a myth, mentioned in ancient texts but never found. It wasn't until the year 2000 that underwater archaeologist Frank Goddio discovered its remains beneath the Abu Qir Bay. What they found was breathtaking. Gigantic statues, over 16 feet tall, still stood silently under the sea. Sphinxes, temples, inscriptions in both Greek and Egyptian, and over 64 ships resting at the bottom, along with 700 ancient anchors. This city didn't merely sink, it was swallowed by a combination of rising waters, earthquakes, and liquefaction of the soil. Now, Heraklion lies in a peaceful aquatic slumber, its grandeur muffled by layers of sand and time. Fish glide past ancient gods, and coral dances over hieroglyphs that once thundered with royal proclamations. Pavlopetri, the world's oldest underwater city, nestled beneath the crystal-clear waters off the coast of Laconia, Greece, lies what is possibly the oldest known submerged city in the world, Pavlopetri. It dates back over 5,000 years, to the early Bronze Age. Here, the ocean has preserved a perfect snapshot of daily life, complete with streets, houses, courtyards, even tombs, and what looks like a marketplace. Remarkably, its layout is still visible from the air, etched into the seabed like a memory refusing to fade. Unlike many other ruins, Pavlopetri wasn't destroyed by war or fire. It was claimed by the slow shifting of tectonic plates and the rising sea. As the land sank, the water gently flowed in, covering homes and doorways that once echoed with laughter and life. Imagine mothers preparing meals, children chasing each other through courtyards, merchants unloading boats at the shoreline, all under skies that had no idea of the sea's quiet hunger. Today, divers move carefully through these ghostly alleys, their bubbles the only sound in a city where time has stopped. Pavlopetri is not just a city, it's a mirrored echo of who we were, long before our histories were written down. The submerged ruins of Baiae, Rome's sunken paradise. Once called the Las Vegas of the Roman Empire, the city of Baiae was the playground of emperors, senators, and wealthy elites. Perched on the coast of the Bay of Naples, this luxurious resort boasted marble villas, bubbling thermal baths, and extravagant feasts. Everyone who was anyone came to Baiae. Nero, Julius Caesar, and Augustus all walked its mosaic floors, surrounded by fountains, gardens, and the salty scent of the sea. But Baiae, like so many cities close to fire and water, became a victim of volcanic activity and rising seas. Over centuries, the land began to sink, and by the Middle Ages, much of the once glorious city lay beneath the waves. Today, modern divers and underwater archaeologists have uncovered vast stretches of mosaics, columns, and statues, perfectly preserved by the ocean's gentle grip. Even entire roads, complete with marble tiles, remain visible under the clear waters. What makes Baiae unique is that it is a submerged Roman city, intact and explorable. The ocean has turned it into a museum no architect could design, one where Neptune's domain guards Rome's faded glory. Canopus, the sunken sister of Alexandria. In the shadow of Alexandria's fame, the city of Canopus once stood as a center of spiritual healing, devotion, and indulgence. Known for its temples and healing sanctuaries, it was a place where people came seeking miracles and pleasure. But time was not kind to Canopus. Like Heracleon, it succumbed to natural disasters, its foundations weakened by earthquakes and erosion. Eventually, the Nile shifted, and the sea moved in. Rediscovered by marine archaeologists, Canopus now rests quietly under the Mediterranean. Columns of red granite, temple courtyards, and ritual basins lying serenely beneath the surface. Ancient inscriptions speak of healing gods like Serapis, and relics show the mingling of Egyptian and Greek faiths. Diving into Canopus is like entering a temple built by memory and water. Each statue seems to pray for resurrection. Each pillar tells a tale of lives who once knelt in awe, laughed in taverns, and believed in forces beyond the visible world. Canopus may have vanished from maps, but its spirit lingers in the rhythm of tides. Port Royal, the wickedest city beneath the waves. Once called the wickedest city on earth, Port Royal in Jamaica was the hub of pirates, merchants, and drunken revelry in the 17th century Caribbean. It was a place of gold, rum, and violence. A bustling port where ships unloaded their treasures and sailors their sins. But on the morning of June 7, 1692, everything changed. A massive earthquake, followed by a tsunami, struck the city. The ground beneath Port Royal liquefied, literally turned to water, and in a matter of minutes, nearly 2/3 of the city sank into the sea. Entire buildings, streets, and people were pulled into the harbor. Witnesses said the earth opened like a mouth and swallowed everything. Churches collapsed. Taverns vanished. It was a biblical punishment, many claimed, divine retribution for a city of sin. What remains of Port Royal now lies in the murky waters of Kingston Harbor. Over time, underwater excavations have revealed preserved streets, buildings, coins, and even a pocket watch, stopped forever at 11:43 a.m., the exact time the earthquake struck. The sea keeps Port Royal's secrets well. Fish swim past sunken taverns. Coral grows where gamblers once sat a day. And the echoes of laughter, screams, and cannon fire now drift softly with the tide. The Xiongnu Confederation, lords of the frozen steppe. Long before the rise of Genghis Khan, the vast, windswept plains of Mongolia were ruled by a confederation of nomadic tribes known as the Xiongnu. These fierce warriors, wrapped in furs and hardened by the cold, once struck fear into the mighty Han Empire of China. The Xiongnu were not a single kingdom, but a mobile empire, a moving, breathing civilization that traveled with its herds across the frigid steppe. They lived in yurts, relied on horses, and organized themselves under a supreme ruler called the Chanyu. At their peak, around the 3rd century BCE, they held territory stretching from Manchuria to Central Asia, and were sophisticated in diplomacy, warfare, and trade. Chinese emperors paid them tributes to keep the peace, sending silk and gold in exchange for silence. But the cold was not their enemy, it was their ally. They thrived in it, moved through snow like ghosts. Their warriors were said to disappear into the blizzard, their arrows falling from skies like winter's own vengeance. Over time, internal strife, climate pressures, and conflicts with other tribes weakened the Xiongnu. Some fled west, disappearing into the mists of history, perhaps becoming the ancestors of the Huns who would later rattle Europe's gates. Today, only burial mounds, scattered bone fragments, and the chill of the Mongolian wind speak of the Xiongnu's frozen legacy, a reminder that even in the most desolate climates, greatness can rise. The Sami people, guardians of the Arctic Circle. Far above the Arctic Circle, among the sweeping snows and northern lights of Lapland, live the Sami people, the indigenous inhabitants of the far north of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia's Kola Peninsula. Though never an empire in the traditional sense, the Sami are a civilization of endurance. For thousands of years, they have lived in harmony with one of the harshest climates on Earth. Their lives revolve around reindeer herding, fishing, and hunting, adapting to a world where the sun might vanish for months, and snow blankets every path. Their clothing, made of reindeer hide and decorated with ancient symbols, is not just art, it is survival. Their homes, like the lavu, a kind of tent, are built to withstand the roaring winds. Their drums and joik songs carry the voices of ancestors across the ice. They once suffered conquest and cultural suppression, pushed aside by expanding kingdoms and states, but their spirit remained intact. In recent years, Sami languages and traditions have seen a revival, carried forward by new generations. While the world changes rapidly, the Sami remain, not as relics of the past, but as living stewards of a frozen tradition, reminding us that history is not always written in stone. Sometimes it is sung to the stars in the stillness of snow. The Rus Khaganate, a kingdom in the frosted forests. Before there was Russia, there was a mysterious, short-lived kingdom called the Rus Khaganate, a fusion of Slavic, Norse, and Finno-Ugric peoples who settled near the rivers and frozen woods of Eastern Europe in the 8th and 9th centuries. Little is known about this kingdom, and much is debated. But ancient Arab and Byzantine sources speak of a ruler titled Khagan, suggesting an influence from Central Asian steppe empires. These early Rus people traded furs, slaves, and silver across a vast network reaching as far as Baghdad and Constantinople. Their ships sailed icy rivers. Their warriors wore mail and carried axes that gleamed like frozen lightning. They founded early towns like Ladoga and Novgorod, precursors to the mighty Russian cities to come. This shadowy kingdom eventually gave way to the Kievan Rus, a more established state with stronger documentation. But the memory of the Rus Khaganate is like footprints in fresh snow, barely there, but undeniable. Its legacy survives in language, tradition, and bloodlines, a kingdom forgotten by time, but not erased by it. The Thule culture, ancestors of the Inuit. High in the Arctic tundra, where the aurora dances and the air bites deep, the Thule people once thrived. The ancestors of today's Inuit, they rose around 1000 CE and expanded rapidly across the Canadian Arctic, Greenland, and parts of Alaska. The Thule were masters of adaptation. They built homes from whale bones and snow, navigated by stars and ice flows, and hunted walrus, seal, and bowhead whales with ingenious tools made of bone, ivory, and driftwood. Unlike kingdoms of stone and iron, the Thule left behind an archaeological signature of skill and sustainability. Their sleds, harpoons, and dog teams allowed them to traverse unimaginable distances in extreme cold. As climates changed and European explorers arrived, the Thule gradually transitioned into what we now recognize as Inuit cultures. Their legacy remains not only in artifacts buried beneath the permafrost, but in the eyes and voices of those who still sing their stories beside frozen shores. To study the Thule is to understand that civilization does not always mean palaces. Sometimes, it is the warm light inside a snow home, flickering with survival, ingenuity, and spirit. The Norse Greenlanders, Vikings in the ice. When we think of Vikings, we picture fiery raids and wooden ships crashing against European shores. But some Norse chose a different fate, sailing west into the icy unknown, to settle in Greenland. Led by Eric the Red around 985 CE, hundreds of Norse farmers crossed the sea and carved a new life on Greenland's southwestern coast. They built stone churches, longhouses, and farms, raising sheep and cattle on thin, grassy soil surrounded by frozen cliffs. For over 400 years, these settlers endured. They maintained ties with Iceland and Norway, even sending walrus ivory and goods to Europe. But slowly, the climate turned, the Little Ice Age set in. Trade diminished. Crops failed. The Inuit pressed from the north. By the 1400s, the Norse Greenlanders vanished. Their churches fell silent. Their cattle bones lay unburied. Archaeologists found meals cut short, skeletons half buried in snow. Did they starve? Did they flee? Were they absorbed into Inuit society? No one knows. Their abandoned settlements still stand, half covered in moss and snow, monuments to courage, stubbornness, and the strange hush of human endings at the edge of the world. The kingdom of Tuvan nomads echoes beneath the Siberian sky. In the snowy southern reaches of Siberia, nestled between mountains and thick forests, lived the ancient Tuvan nomads, a people whose story remains largely unwritten, their legacy carried more in song than in stone. Their world was one of endless white landscapes, where reindeer tracks led the way and yurts dotted the windswept plains. They practiced a spiritual blend of shamanism and animism, deeply connected to nature, and communicated with the spirits of the forest, water, and wind. What set the Tuvans apart was their remarkable throat singing, a musical tradition where one voice carries multiple tones, imitating the wind, the river, and even the howl of the wolf. These songs were more than melodies. They were maps, memories, and sacred stories of a people surviving in a land wrapped in cold silence. While not an empire in the traditional sense, the Tuvan nomads had a societal order, spiritual authority, and trade systems that bound them together. They traded furs, meat, and salt, and often migrated seasonally, chasing warmth, grazing land, and balance. Eventually, waves of conquest, from Mongols to Russians, changed their way of life. But even now, Tuvan songs still echo through the snowy valleys of Siberia, telling stories of a time when life and legend walked hand in hand beneath the northern sky. The Ainu of the snowy north, Japan's indigenous forgotten people. Far to the north of Japan's Hokkaido island, there exists a culture older than the Japanese Empire itself. The Ainu people, indigenous stewards of a cold and misty world. The Ainu lived close to nature, with a deep respect for animals and spirits. They built homes from timber and bark, dressed in embroidered robes of woven elm, and believed the natural world to be sacred, full of kamui, or spiritual beings. Bears, in particular, were revered as divine messengers. The Ainu were skilled hunters, fishers, and gatherers. They used stone tools, domesticated dogs, and caught salmon from icy rivers, preserving them for the long winters ahead. Their snow-covered villages were places of warmth, stories, and quiet resilience. For centuries, the Ainu lived independently, but as the Japanese expanded northward, they faced forced assimilation and cultural suppression. By the 19th century, many Ainu customs were banned, and their language teetered on the edge of extinction. But still, the snow remembers. In recent years, Ainu traditions are being revived. Their language is taught once more, their dances performed under starlit skies, and their presence acknowledged as Japan rediscovers this forgotten kingdom of the cold. The Chuki, ice warriors of the Russian Far East. In the farthest reaches of eastern Siberia, where the wind never rests and the sea is more ice than water, live the Chuki, a hardy people who have weathered centuries of isolation and Arctic cold. The Chuki were both reindeer herders and coastal hunters, depending on whether they lived inland or by the Bering Sea. Their lives were shaped by snowstorms and silence, yet they created rich oral traditions, vivid clothing, and tools of bone, stone, and sinew. What is remarkable is that the Chuki resisted colonization longer than most. When the Russian Empire expanded eastward in the 17th and 18th centuries, they met fierce resistance. The Chuki fought back with bows, spears, and intimate knowledge of their frozen terrain, eventually forcing the Russians to sign a peace treaty in 1778. Their semi-nomadic lifestyle involved moving reindeer herds across tundra landscapes, living in cone-shaped tents called yarangas, and navigating by stars and intuition. Even in blizzards, they knew their paths. Though modern pressures have changed many things, the Chuki continue to preserve their heritage. Festivals, clothing, and reindeer traditions remain. In the icy corners of the world, they endure, quiet witnesses to a cold legacy few can comprehend. The Hyperboreans, a mythical kingdom in the far north. Among the earliest writings of ancient Greece, there are whispers of a fabled kingdom called Hyperborea, a land beyond the north wind, bathed in eternal spring and untouched by sorrow. According to legend, Hyperborea lay somewhere far to the north, perhaps in the Arctic Circle or beyond. Its people, the Hyperboreans, were said to live 1,000 years in peace, guided by music, harmony, and celestial wisdom. They worshipped Apollo, and it was believed that once a year, swans carried sacred offerings from Delos to Hyperborea. Though no evidence proves the kingdom existed, it appears in works by Herodotus, Pindar, and Pliny the Elder, capturing the Greek imagination. To them, Hyperborea was a place of perfect balance, neither too hot nor too cold, where snow was gentle, not harsh. Over centuries, explorers and scholars searched for signs of this utopia in the Arctic, Greenland, and even Siberia. They found none, only cold winds and silence. Still, the myth endures. In the realm of frozen kingdoms, Hyperborea reminds us that sometimes the most powerful empires are the ones that live not on maps, but in the warm corners of the human dream. The kingdom of Scylla's ice forts, Korea's snowy borderlands. While the Scylla kingdom of Korea is often remembered for its golden crowns, Buddhist temples, and unification of the Korean peninsula, fewer speak of its northern outposts, regions that brushed against cold mountains and icy winds. These snow-kissed lands were where Scylla's soldiers built fortified mountain outposts, hidden in forests and capped by frost. Here, the warriors trained not only against enemy tribes but also against the biting cold. They constructed stone ramparts, dug deep into snowy slopes, and developed logistics lines to deliver food and firewood over treacherous winter terrain. Their armor was adapted to cold, their arrows hardened to ice. In these highlands, life was not only a battle against men but also against nature. From these icy borders, Scylla expanded its influence northward, absorbing rival tribes and laying the groundwork for a unified Korea. Though the snowy forts eventually fell into ruin, their stones still lie nestled beneath pine and powder, silent and unmoving. And thus ends the tale of one of Korea's lesser-known frostbound legacies, a kingdom that fought both time and tundra. The Kingdom of Angkor, lost beneath the Cambodian canopy. In the humid heart of Southeast Asia, where the air is thick with the perfume of lotus flowers and the gentle hum of cicadas, once stood Angkor, the capital of the mighty Khmer Empire. Between the 9th and 15th centuries, Angkor blossomed into one of the largest pre-industrial cities on Earth. Its temples, the most famous being Angkor Wat, were not just places of worship but entire cosmic landscapes carved in stone. These structures aligned with the stars, their towers mirroring the sacred peaks of Mount Meru from Hindu and Buddhist cosmology. The jungle was both a friend and a foe. It offered the kingdom sustenance, rice, fish, timber, but it also grew endlessly, creeping over temples and swallowing the stone. After the 15th century, monsoon failures, shifting trade routes, and invasions led to Angkor's decline. The forest began to reclaim the city. For centuries, Angkor slumbered beneath vines and moss, hidden from the world until French explorers rediscovered it in the 19th century. Today, though its walkways are cracked and the jungle whispers louder than the prayers, Angkor remains a breathtaking echo of a forgotten kingdom, one carved in devotion, swallowed in silence. The mysterious city of Ubar, Arabia's green mirage. In the deserts of Oman, amidst shifting sands and shimmering heat, legend speaks of Ubar, a city once so wealthy that its pillars gleamed with gold and incense, often called Atlantis of the Sands. But in recent decades, researchers have begun to suspect that Ubar was more than a tale. Using satellite imaging, archaeologists uncovered the remains of ancient trade outposts buried deep beneath desert dunes. These sites linked the incense trade routes of southern Arabia, where frankincense and myrrh were once more valuable than gold. The city was thought to sit near a desert oasis, fed by underground water. As Ubar grew rich from trade with India, Mesopotamia, and Egypt, it also became prideful. According to myth, the people of Ubar defied divine command, leading to the city's destruction. In the tale, a sinkhole opened, swallowing the city whole. While reality may differ, it's true that water tables in the region collapsed, and climate changes brought long droughts, driving away life. The green disappeared. The jungle retreated. Sand took over. Whether mythical or historical, Ubar lives on in dreams. A city buried beneath time and dust, perhaps once wrapped in palm trees and jungle bloom, now only visible to the eye of the imagination. The Maya cities, temples among the trees. The Maya civilization once stretched across modern-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras, flourishing in dense jungles and highlands, hidden beneath canopies so thick they could block out the sun. Maya cities were unlike any others. With stepped pyramids, astronomical observatories, and intricately carved stelae, These city-states communicated across vast distances with stone roads called sakbiob and traded cacao, obsidian, and jade. The jungle offered the Maya both sustenance and concealment. They studied the stars from the tops of forest temples and carved calendars so accurate that they stunned modern scientists. But by the 9th century, many Maya cities were mysteriously abandoned. Droughts, overpopulation, warfare, and environmental stress all likely played a role. The jungle returned with quiet vengeance, tree roots cracking stones, moss softening sculptures, vines curling through sacred chambers. It wasn't until the 19th and 20th centuries that explorers and archaeologists began rediscovering Maya ruins. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, and Calakmul emerged once more, not with fanfare, but through whispers of leaves and the gentle brushing of wind against stone. Today, they are worlds within worlds, once vibrant capitals, now resting places of parrots and frogs, where history sleeps under the leaves. The Jibilchultán ruins, echoes of light in the Yucatan. Not far from the sunny beaches of Mexico lies a site that few tourists ever see, Jibilchultán, a Maya city whose name means place where there is writing on flat stones. Though smaller than more famous cities like Tikal or Chichen Itza, Jibilchultán was a place of great astronomical importance. One of its main structures, the Temple of the Seven Dolls, is precisely aligned with the sun. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, sunlight pierces the windows and doors in perfect symmetry, lighting the inner chamber in gold. The jungle here is more sparse, drier, yet still commanding. Over time, Jibilchultán was slowly consumed by brush and forgotten by maps. Only a few stone walls and ceremonial pools, called cenotes, remained as signs of past grandeur. These sacred wells once supplied water and connected to the Maya underworld, Xibalba. Pilgrims and priests would make offerings, believing that spirits resided in the depths. Today, under the gaze of stars and buzzing insects, Jibilchultán stands as a hushed monument, not to battles or empires, but to light, silence, and the rhythm of the earth. The hidden kingdom of Bigo, Uganda's ancient walls. In the lush green hills of western Uganda, along the banks of the Katonah River, lie mysterious earthworks known as the Bigo Walls. Built by an unknown civilization over 600 years ago, they stretch across the landscape, ditches, mounds, and fortifications hidden beneath grass and trees. The walls are part of what is believed to be the capital of an ancient kingdom, possibly ruled by the Bakwezi, a semi-mythical people who are said to possess magical powers, ride glowing cattle, and build without tools. The jungle has long kept their secrets. No written records survive, and few artifacts remain. Yet oral history speaks of a time of peace and prosperity, where trade flowed, rituals were performed, and the earth itself was shaped into sacred lines. Even today, local traditions respect the Bigo site. Elders warn against disturbing the land, and spiritual ceremonies are still held near the. In the soft green hush of Uganda's hills, the kingdom of Bigo remains neither fully myth nor fully known. A quiet reminder that history, like the jungle, often grows wild and without borders. The city of Nan Madol, floating stones in the Pacific green. Off the eastern shore of Pohnpei Island in Micronesia, surrounded by mangrove forests and tidal lagoons, lies Nan Madol, a city built on a lagoon, constructed entirely from giant basalt columns and coral platforms. It is one of the most unique ancient cities in the world, and yet, it rests quietly in obscurity. Nan Madol was the ceremonial capital of the Sordala dynasty, which ruled these islands from around 1100 to 1600 CE. Built across 92 artificial islets, connected by a network of canals, the city is sometimes called the Venice of the Pacific. But unlike Venice, Nan Madol is shrouded in lush green mystery. Towering trees drape their roots over stone walls, and the soft calls of island birds echo through broken corridors. Many of the basalt logs weigh several tons, and no one knows exactly how they were transported across the island. Some believe by raft, others suggest ancient magic. As the Sordala rulers grew tyrannical, local resistance rose. Eventually, the dynasty fell, and Nan Madol was abandoned. The jungle crept in. The waters became still. And so, the city faded, not into dust, but into the warm, sleepy rhythm of the waves and wind. The city of Calakmul, the Snake Kingdom in the forest. Hidden deep within the dense jungles of Mexico's Campeche region, near the Guatemalan border, rests Calakmul, once a powerful Maya city and the fierce rival of Tikal. Calakmul was the capital of the Con dynasty, or Snake Kingdom, one of the most influential political powers of the Maya classic period. Its rulers wore serpent headdresses and claimed divine right over dozens of nearby cities. In its prime, over 50,000 people lived in Calakmul's sprawling forest-covered domain. Today, the city's remains lie within a biosphere reserve, surrounded by howler monkeys, toucans, and the thick scent of rain-soaked leaves. Massive pyramids still rise from the greenery, including Structure 2, one of the tallest in the Maya world. Time slowed here. When Calakmul fell, likely due to internal conflict, ecological strain, and regional collapse, it vanished into the jungle like a breath into fog. For centuries, its pyramids became hills, its plazas hidden under ferns. Only in the 20th century did archaeologists begin to peel back the vines and rediscover its tale. Calakmul sleeps still, under the watchful eyes of forest creatures, wrapped in the jungle's quiet embrace. The temple complex of Khmer, warriors and wilderness. Not far from Angkor Wat, but far less known, lies Khmer, a forgotten capital of the Khmer Empire, briefly flourishing in the early 10th century. For only a short time, King Jayavarman IV made Khmer the center of Khmer power. In that brief span, he built over 40 major temples, including a unique seven-tiered pyramid, an unusual structure in Southeast Asia. The jungle swirls thickly around it, and the pyramid looks more like something from Mesoamerica than the familiar stone towers of Angkor. The city was abandoned when the capital returned to Angkor, and centuries of isolation followed. Trees pushed through stone, lichen painted walls with soft greens and silvers. The temple carvings of dancers, warriors, and deities became homes for birds and insects. Khmer remained largely untouched even into the 21st century. Landmines from past conflicts kept it hidden and unexplored for decades. Only recently has it been studied more closely. Today, it stands still, regal and wild, its pyramid peeking through the trees, as if unsure whether to return to history or keep dreaming among the roots. The Zigwe cities of Tanzania, forgotten fortresses of earth and vine. Along the coast of Tanzania, behind layers of coastal forest and overgrown paths, archaeologists have uncovered the ruins of ancient Swahili settlements, once vibrant centers of trade, culture, and spiritual life. One such group was the Zigwe people, who lived in earthen-walled towns during the late first millennium. These settlements were built using coral stone and hardened mud, positioned along riverbanks and forest edges, creating a network of small kingdoms that linked inland Africa with the Indian Ocean world. Trade routes brought ivory, iron, gold, and slaves, while Arab, Indian, and Persian merchants offered ceramics, beads, and cloth. Over time, political changes, shifting economies, and climate challenges caused the abandonment of many towns. The forest took over. Homes crumbled. Fort walls softened and were draped in ferns. The songs of the marketplace were replaced by the hum of bees and the rustle of trees. Today, the Zigwe ruins are barely visible beneath layers of vegetation. They are part of a history rarely told, yet deeply rooted in the soil, preserved not in museums, but in silence, shadow, and the green hush of Africa's coastal forests. The city of Luba, Congo's royal forest kingdom. Deep in the Congo basin, surrounded by some of the richest biodiversity on Earth, once thrived the Luba Kingdom, a complex civilization that rose around the 16th century and lasted into the 19th. Unlike many kingdoms with great stone cities, the Luba civilization was one of oral tradition, memory, and sacred leadership. Their power stemmed from spiritual legitimacy, where kings were chosen through a divine lineage and knowledge was passed through memory boards, carved wooden tools used to recount generations of history, culture, and law. The Luba people built wooden palaces, shrines, and market centers, many of which have now vanished due to time, decay, and the ever-growing rainforest. The Congo jungles, thick with sound and shadow, reclaimed the wooden structures, leaving behind only faint outlines in the earth and sacred trees that mark forgotten sites. Yet their stories endure. Through songs, ceremonies, and the art of remembering, the Luba preserved their identity. And in the deep woods, among the echoing bird calls and rustling leaves. It's said that the past can still be heard, not in stone, but in the breath of the forest itself. The lost kingdoms of the desert, civilizations swallowed by sand. While jungles cradle the ruins of ancient empires in shade and silence, the desert buries its kingdoms beneath endless dunes. Winds howl where kings once reigned. Sand smooths stone, silence swallows legacy. Here are 10 forgotten desert kingdoms, some buried entirely, others still whispering through crumbled clay and golden dust. Ubar, Atlantis of the sands. In the heart of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter of Arabia, explorers have long sought a lost city whispered about in both Bedouin legend and Islamic scripture. This city is Ubar, often called the Atlantis of the sands. Described in ancient texts as a center of wealth, trade, and decadence, Ubar was a city that grew rich from the frankincense trade, supplying sacred resins to Egypt, Rome, and beyond. But according to the Quran and local myth, its people became arrogant. As punishment, the city was swallowed by a great calamity, possibly a sinkhole, sandstorm, or divine wrath. In the 1990s, satellite imaging and excavation revealed ancient ruins near Khazar, Oman, thought by some to be Ubar. The area included a collapsed limestone cavern and traces of ancient caravans. Whether this was truly Ubar or another forgotten city, no one knows for sure. What is certain is that the desert keeps its secrets well, and where once towers stood, only dunes remain, gently rippling under the blazing sun. The Kingdom of Hatra, walls against the wind. Rising from the desert plains of northern Iraq, the ancient city of Hatra was once a thriving religious and trade center between Rome and Persia. It flourished in the 2nd century CE, under the rule of Arab kings who built a city of temples, columns, and massive stone walls, capable of withstanding multiple Roman sieges. Hatra was a place of spiritual fusion, where Greek, Mesopotamian, Aramaic, and Arabian deities were worshipped side by side. It stood as a beacon of tolerance and strength, a desert fortress surrounded by open plains and endless heat. But as empires shifted and power lines redrew, Hatra faded. Its sandstone towers wore away. Statues eroded. The desert crept closer. And for centuries, the city slumbered beneath the watch of owls and wind. Though rediscovered in modern times, Hatra has suffered again, from neglect, time, and war. Still, the bones of its temples stand proud, bathed in amber twilight, waiting for peace to return to the desert. Ghadames, the pearl of the desert. Tucked into a secluded oasis in Libya's Sahara, the city of Ghadames has existed for centuries as a white-walled labyrinth of mud-brick homes, narrow passages, and cooling courtyards. Though its roots reach back to the Roman Empire, its soul belongs to the Berber and Tuareg peoples. Ghadames was once a vibrant caravan stop, a resting point for traders carrying gold, salt, and slaves across the vast Sahara. Its people engineered brilliant methods of passive cooling, using layered walls and underground passages to beat the relentless heat. As trade declined and modern transport replaced caravans, Ghadames slowly emptied. Families left. The city's lower levels darkened. Sand crept into empty doorways. Yet, even in abandonment, Ghadames gleams, its white facades shimmering like a mirage. The sound of footsteps echoes in its empty alleys, and the smell of dust and desert herbs lingers like memory. It's not fully gone, just asleep, preserved like a fossil in time, kissed by desert winds. The Garamantes, lords beneath the sand. In the barren wastelands of Fezzan, Libya, archaeologists once believed the area uninhabitable, until they uncovered the traces of the Garamantes, a forgotten Saharan kingdom that thrived from 500 BCE to 700 CE. The Garamantes developed sophisticated underground irrigation systems called fogaras, which tapped into deep aquifers. These channels allowed farming in a land otherwise parched, and supported urban settlements with thousands of people. They traded in gold, salt, and slaves, and maintained contact with both the Roman Empire and African tribes. At their peak, they were a major regional power, and yet, they left few monuments, few written records, and no grand statues. When the water ran out, so did the people. Their towns were reclaimed by the desert. Sand buried their roads. Their once bustling towns turned into flat stretches of wind-carved silence. Only through aerial photography and deep digging has the world begun to rediscover them. The Garamantes, once rulers of their world, now whisper only through broken pottery and forgotten tunnels beneath the sand. The Nabateans beyond Petra, vanished kingdom in stone. Most know the Nabateans as the builders of Petra, the rose-red city carved into the cliffs of Jordan. But their kingdom stretched far wider, into modern-day Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the deserts of the Negev. They were master traders, controlling incense and spice routes that connected Arabia to the Mediterranean. Their cities were carved into rock, fortified, and shaded, blending seamlessly into the desert environment. Outside of Petra, their forgotten cities like Hegra, Madain Soleh, in Saudi Arabia still stand, with tombs, temples, and wells untouched for centuries. Many of these sites are barely explored, their silence protected by the shifting dunes. When Rome annexed their territory in 106 CE, the Nabatean identity faded. Their language, script, and gods slipped away. Sand filled their streets. And though Petra became a tourist marvel, the rest of their kingdom remains hidden, waiting, sleeping in stone. The kingdom of Kataban, the forgotten lords of Yemen. In the arid highlands of what is now southern Yemen, the kingdom of Kataban once flourished, a powerful and prosperous state that thrived over 2,000 years ago. Nestled between the great incense routes that laced Arabia, Kataban was part of the fabled South Arabian trade network, a civilization that once competed with Saba and Hadramaut. Kataban's capital was Timna, not the Timna of Israel, but a separate, glorious city where incense caravans paused before making the long, dangerous journey northward toward the Mediterranean. The rulers of Kataban were known as the Mukaribs, priest-kings who wielded both spiritual and political power over their people. This desert kingdom mastered the art of terrace farming, capturing seasonal rainfall and channeling it into clever irrigation systems. Their temples honored Athta, the god of the morning star, and their scribes used the Musnad script, chiseling decrees and poetry into stone slabs that still remain, weathered by centuries of wind. But as the incense trade began to decline and rival kingdoms grew stronger, Kataban weakened. War, drought, and shifting trade routes left its cities abandoned. The capital fell silent. The once vital pathways through Timna faded beneath the dust of history. Today, the ruins of Kataban lie hidden in the Yemeni desert, visited only by scholars and the occasional traveler. Its history whispers from broken columns and sun-bleached stones, a reminder of the glory that once echoed in the highlands of Arabia. The kingdom of DMT shadows before Aksum. Long before the rise of the Aksumite Empire in East Africa, another kingdom flourished in the Ethiopian and Eritrean highlands, a nearly forgotten realm known as DMT. Emerging sometime around the 10th century BCE, the kingdom of DMT was centered around Ya, where a massive stone temple still stands today, believed to have been dedicated to the South Arabian god Al-Makka. This temple, made with precisely cut stone blocks and no mortar, is one of the oldest structures in sub-Saharan Africa, a sign of a people with both ambition and engineering knowledge. The people of DMT may have been influenced by South Arabian traders who crossed the Red Sea, bringing their gods, their language, and their agricultural techniques. In return, the people of DMT offered gold, ivory, and exotic goods, trading across what was then a bustling maritime crossroads. Despite their achievements, DMT left behind no grand statues, no written chronicles of its rulers, and few artifacts. Its decline is still a mystery, perhaps internal strife, environmental collapse, or the rise of rival states consumed it. Yet, it is from the ashes of DMT that Aksum would one day rise. Though largely forgotten, DMT planted seeds of culture, writing, and architecture that would blossom into one of Africa's greatest empires. And now, its temples remain half-buried, bathed in golden light, waiting for patient discovery. The kingdom of Aksum's desert outposts, the dimming of the southern sun. Though the kingdom of Aksum is well remembered as one of the great empires of ancient Africa, its desert outposts, those distant colonies and trade towns, are often forgotten, eclipsed by the glory of its capital. Stretching from the Ethiopian highlands to the coasts of modern Eritrea, Sudan, and even into the Arabian Peninsula, Aksum's influence was vast. Its outposts were vital for controlling the Red Sea trade routes, facilitating the flow of ivory, spices, and even slaves. Cities like Agilis, once a bustling port, now lie in ruins, buried by centuries of sediment and time. These desert outposts were architectural wonders, constructed with multi-story stone buildings, elaborate drainage systems, and inscriptions in the ancient Ge'ez script. But as Aksum's power waned, due to changes in trade, the rise of Islam, and possible climate change, these far-off cities were abandoned one by one. Agilis became a ghost port. Desert roads faded. Ships no longer stopped at the silent shore. Today, the stones of Aksum's outposts remain sun-bleached and quiet. They bear no voices, only the wind. Yet within them lies the story of a kingdom that dared to cross seas, tame deserts, and challenge the empires of its time, only to fade into the dust. The city of Arakhanum, Greek dreams in the Afghan desert. Far to the northeast, where desert meets mountain and Central Asia brushes against Afghanistan, lies the site of Arakhanum, a city whose name once rang with the elegant tones of Hellenic speech, even while surrounded by dust and foreign tongues. Founded by followers of Alexander the Great in the 4th century BCE, Arakhanum was a Greek city in a Persian land, a place where gymnasiums, amphitheaters, and Ionic columns stood proudly beside mud-brick homes and desert fortresses. Philosophy and science were taught in Greek schools. Poetry was inscribed on stone. Citizens debated under shaded colonnades. But this dream of empire, this fragment of Athens in the desert, could not last forever. As the Greco-Bactrian kingdom fractured under pressure from invaders and internal unrest, Arakhanum was attacked and eventually destroyed, possibly by nomadic forces. Its columns fell. Its libraries burned. Its sculptures shattered. For centuries, the city was forgotten. Then, in the 20th century, archaeologists uncovered its ghost. A palace, a temple, even a sundial, all slowly emerging from the soil of a forgotten empire. Arakhanum now rests in silence, broken and buried, a fleeting dream of marble and sand. The desert palaces of the Umayyads, faded grandeur of the caliphs. In the heart of Jordan and Syria, scattered across the wilderness like secrets left in haste, lie the desert palaces of the Umayyad Caliphate. These were not cities, but exquisite compounds, retreats, outposts, hunting lodges, and fortresses, built during the 8th century. Palaces like Khazar Amra, Khazar Alhaya, and Khazar Khaganate display a strange and beautiful mixture of Roman, Persian, and Islamic architectural influences. Walls were painted with frescoes, depicting not just Islamic themes but also scenes of bathing women, animals, and even zodiac symbols, a glimpse into a more open, artistic Islamic world. These palaces were often placed in desolate locations, amidst stony plains, near seasonal rivers, or in the shadow of dunes. They served as hubs for rest, governance, and surveillance of Bedouin tribes. Over time, the caliphate shifted eastward. The desert grew wilder. The roads fell silent. And these palaces, once vibrant with music, poetry, and diplomacy, became lonely, magnificent ruins. Today, Khazar Amra remains as a UNESCO site, its walls still bearing faded paintings. The rest lie half-forgotten in the desert, their arches broken but proud, their secrets guarded by the endless silence of sand and stone. Forgotten kingdoms of the forest, civilizations lost in green silence. Deep within the heart of the world's jungles and forests, shrouded in vines, veiled by mist, and blanketed in silence, lie the remains of once mighty kingdoms. These civilizations rose amid the trees, building cities not of concrete and steel, but of stone and spirit, all wrapped in the living embrace of nature. For centuries, they flourished, until the forest took them back. Here begins our quiet journey through 10 forgotten kingdoms of the forest. The Khmer Empire, anchors reign beneath the canopy. In the dense tropical forests of Cambodia, one of the greatest empires in Southeast Asian history once flourished. The Khmer Empire, which reached its golden age between the 9th and 15th centuries. Its capital, Angkor, was not merely a city but a sprawling complex of stone temples, reservoirs, roads, and homes, spread across hundreds of square kilometers. At its height, Angkor was one of the largest pre-industrial cities in the world, supported by sophisticated hydraulic engineering that allowed rice cultivation even during dry seasons. The centerpiece was Angkor Wat, a magnificent temple dedicated to Vishnu, with lotus-shaped towers rising through the trees like sacred mountains. Its bas-reliefs carved entire mythologies into stone: battles of gods, processions of kings, cosmic dances of time and destruction. Yet, despite its strength, Angkor eventually faded. The reasons remain debated: climate change, wars, shifting trade routes, internal decline. The jungle began to reclaim the city. Temples were strangled by banyan trees, their roots twisting through ancient walls. Roads disappeared beneath moss and leaves. When French explorers stumbled upon Angkor in the 19th century, they found not just ruins, but a city swallowed by time, a divine metropolis gently cradled by the forest. Today, Angkor stands again, restored in part, yet still dreaming beneath the Cambodian sky, where cicadas sing and leaves whisper the secrets of fallen kings. The Maya cities of the rainforest, lords of the Green Kingdom. Far across the ocean, deep within the rainforests of Central America, the Maya civilization built vast cities amid the trees. Cities like Tikal, Palenque, Copan, and Calakmul, centers of astronomy, mathematics, architecture, and written language. Rising from the forest floor were pyramids, observatories, ball courts, and royal palaces, all carefully aligned with the stars. The Maya carved glyphs into stone, recorded their dynasties, charted celestial movements, and developed a calendar more accurate than Europe's. But over centuries, one by one, these cities were abandoned. Some fell due to warfare between rival kingdoms. Others were victims of drought or exhausted agriculture. As the people left, the rainforest crept back. Roots broke through walls. Birds nested in ancient corridors. Trees grew atop pyramids, their roots spilling down the sides like waterfalls. By the time Spanish explorers arrived, the great cities of the Maya had already become echoes beneath the canopy. They were called lost, though the descendants of the Maya lived on, still do. Today, the jungle still hides many secrets. LiDAR scanning reveals even more buried cities. The Maya world sleeps, but not forgotten, under the breathing green veil of the forest. The Kingdom of Congo, rainforest lords of Central Africa. In the dense forests of Central Africa, between the Congo River and the Atlantic Ocean, the Kingdom of Congo once reigned. A powerful state that emerged in the 14th century and lasted, in varying forms, for nearly 500 years. The Congo kings ruled over a federation of provinces, their capital at Mbanza Congo, perched on forested hills. Early Portuguese visitors in the 15th century were stunned to find a well-organized city with stone buildings, markets, and a functioning bureaucracy. The Congo people mined iron, traded ivory and slaves, and were early adopters of Christianity, blending it with their traditional beliefs. For a time, Congo thrived. But the kingdom suffered from the destabilizing impact of European colonization, the Atlantic slave trade, and internal conflicts. Eventually, the capital was abandoned. The forest grew thicker. The kingdom faded into regional fragments. Today, Mbanza Congo is a small town. Few ruins remain. But beneath the earth, the memory of a proud and structured society rests, of kings who ruled under the shadow of trees, who greeted missionaries and diplomats, and who fought to preserve their land. The Calusa, the shell kings of Florida's mangroves. In the tangled mangrove swamps and estuaries of southwest Florida, a powerful indigenous civilization rose that left no stone monuments but shaped the land itself, the Calusa. The Calusa people were shell mound builders, constructing vast artificial islands and platforms from shells, sand, and debris. Their capital was Mound Key, a 125-acre shell island in the middle of an estuary. From here, the Calusa ruled over much of southern Florida, controlling hundreds of miles of coastline. They were skilled fishers, engineers of canals and fisheries, and resistant to both enemies and the Spanish invaders who tried to subjugate them. Their cities were made not of stone, but of shells, layered into mounds, platforms, and causeways. Nature was their architecture, the sea their road. They created a kingdom out of water and silence. But by the 1700s, disease, warfare, and colonial disruption led to their decline. Their cities were reclaimed by the mangroves, their mounds hidden beneath the trees. Today, only the contours of their shell mounds remain, rising gently beneath the forest canopy, half forgotten, yet still there. The kingdom of Nan Madol, Venice of the Pacific. Off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia lies the ruined city of Nan Madol, sometimes called the Venice of the Pacific. It was built atop a series of artificial islets, separated by canals, in the midst of a lagoon fringed by rainforest. Constructed of basalt columns, some weighing many tons, Nan Madol was a marvel of engineering, a city on water, connected by coral paths, inhabited by the Sordala dynasty. Here, kings and priests ruled over their island realm. Temples, tombs, and residences were arranged with precise order. Magic and ritual governed everyday life. The surrounding jungle offered timber, food, and shelter. But over time, the dynasty fell, and the city was abandoned. The reasons are unclear. Legends speak of tyranny, rebellion, and curses. Now, vines creep over the walls, and mangroves root in sacred courtyards. Nan Madol lies silent beneath the moon, its black stone glistening with mist and rain, its story cradled by forest and tide. The Shilluk Kingdom, forest thrones along the Nile. In the tropical savannas and riverine forests of what is now South Sudan, the Shilluk Kingdom flourished along the banks of the White Nile. While not often mentioned among grand empires, the Shilluk had a rich oral tradition, a sacred monarchy, and a unique societal structure that tied kingship directly to divine ancestry. The capital, Fashoda, was nestled in the natural forested wetlands. Here, the Reth, or king, was both a ruler and a semi-divine figure, descended from the mythical founder Nikang. The forest around the kingdom provided shelter, game, medicinal herbs, and a natural defense from outsiders. Rather than massive temples or cities of stone, the Shilluk left behind stories, ceremonial songs, and a way of life deeply woven into the rhythm of the trees and the river. As colonial borders were drawn and modern states emerged, the kingdom was gradually absorbed. Fashoda faded into history. Yet, within the whispering trees along the White Nile, echoes of Shilluk drums and the chants of royal rituals still seem to drift through the reeds, as if the forest itself remembers. The Saluva dynasty, hidden temples in the Indian jungles. In the thick forests of southern India, the Saluva dynasty, a transitional ruling house of the mighty Vijayanagara Empire, held sway during the late 15th century. Though their reign was brief, their presence helped preserve the sacred forest temples and woodland paths of Hampi, the empire's heart. The jungles around Hampi were not barren wilderness, but sacred groves, places of pilgrimage, meditation, and divine mystery. The Saluvas, though often overshadowed by their more powerful predecessors and successors, governed a spiritual landscape filled with carved boulders, quiet shrines, and ancient banyans. As the empire declined, many of these jungle temples were abandoned. Trees grew through stone archways. Roots split apart prayer halls. Parakeets and monkeys replaced chanting priests. What remains now is a haunting blend of nature and memory, the forest and the divine, bound together. When the monsoon rains fall and the rivers flood, the forest seems to breathe, and those who listen carefully might hear the quiet prayers of kings who once ruled from shaded groves. The Kingdom of Butua, Zimbabwe's forest cousin. While Great Zimbabwe often gets the spotlight, the nearby and less-known Kingdom of Butua thrived further west, in the wooded regions of modern-day Zimbabwe and Botswana, between the 15th and 17th centuries. Centered around the Kami ruins, Butua's stone walls rose not from open plains but from areas surrounded by dry forests and brush. The architecture of Kami featured beautifully decorated stone patterns, without mortar, a hallmark of advanced African engineering. Butua was rich in gold and cattle, and its kings traded with Swahili merchants along the Indian Ocean coast. The forests provided game, wood, and medicinal plants, while the stone cities offered cool refuge from the sun. Over time, shifting trade routes and political decline led to its abandonment. Today, Kami's walls still stand, half hidden behind thorn trees and tall grasses. Antelope graze where nobles once walked. The songs of birds echo through ancient courtyards, and the scent of dust and acacia floats through the ruins like memory. The Iroquois Longhouse cities, woodland confederacy of the north. Far from tropical jungles, in the wooded valleys and hills of northeastern North America, the Iroquois Confederacy built a forest civilization that combined diplomacy, warfare, and agriculture. Composed of 6 powerful nations, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and later the Tuscarora, the Iroquois were united by the Great Law of Peace, one of the earliest known systems of constitutional governance. Their homes were longhouses, massive wooden structures built from saplings, bark, and earth, sometimes hundreds of feet long. These were not isolated villages, but part of large, well-organized settlements nestled within forests rich in deer, turkey, and maple trees. Though not kingdoms in the European sense, the Iroquois territories were politically complex, highly strategic, and deeply spiritual. Their society balanced consensus rule, matrilineal clans, and sustainable forest management. As European colonization swept through, war and disease shattered many of these woodland communities. Yet the trees remember. In places like Ganondagan, sacred sites endure. Leaves still rustle in the wind above old trails, carrying stories of peace, of council fires, and of longhouses filled with life. The Kingdom of Benin, rainforests of bronze and blood. Tucked into the rainforests of what is now southern Nigeria, the Kingdom of Benin was one of Africa's greatest medieval powers, thriving from the 11th century until British invasion in the late 19th century. Benin's capital, Edo, was a sprawling city surrounded by immense earthworks and moats, the Benin Walls, that stretched for thousands of kilometers, far longer than the Great Wall of China, according to some scholars. Inside, palaces and homes were built in harmony with the surrounding jungle. Benin was famous for its bronze artwork, cast using the lost wax technique, which depicted kings, warriors, ceremonies, and forest spirits. The rainforest was sacred, home to gods, ancestors, and divine animals. Rituals, governance, and warfare were all guided by the Oba, the divine king. When the British looted Benin in 1897, they took thousands of bronzes. The city was burned. The kingdom fell. But today, the trees still stand. Rain falls gently over mossy ruins. The forest whispers of royal processions, of ivory thrones, and of a people who once ruled with fire, art, and spirit from the heart of the African jungle. Desert empires, lost kingdoms beneath the sand. The Garamantes, Sahara's hidden engineers. Deep in the heart of what is now southwestern Libya, beneath the vast expanse of the Sahara Desert, the Garamantes once built a thriving kingdom, a society so advanced and yet so forgotten that for centuries, they were dismissed as little more than mirage-dwelling nomads. But the sand was only hiding their truth. The Garamantes were desert pioneers. Between 500 BCE and 700 CE, they constructed a network of underground tunnels called fogaras, which transported water from deep aquifers to surface fields. These tunnels stretched for miles beneath the blistering sands, allowing agriculture and urban life to bloom in what should have been an unlivable wasteland. Their capital city, Garama, modern Jerma, housed thousands. Archaeologists have uncovered streets, homes, tombs, and even traces of urban planning. What's more, the Garamantes had written scripts, traded with both Rome and sub-Saharan Africa, and maintained a unique identity amidst the pressures of empire and environment. But as the climate shifted and water tables dropped, the fogaras failed. Sand swept over the farms. The cities fell silent. Today, only scattered ruins remain. When wind blows across the Libyan sands, it sometimes uncovers pottery shards, crumbling walls, and the whispers of a kingdom swallowed whole by the desert it once conquered. The kingdom of Marin, Arabia's lost caravans. In what is now Yemen, once stood the kingdom of Marin, a desert trading realm that flourished between the 6th and 2nd centuries BCE. These were the Manians, master merchants of the incense trade, whose caravan routes carried frankincense and myrrh across the parched heart of the Arabian Peninsula. The Maronite capital, Karnawu, was nestled amid craggy hills and rocky sands. Its towering stone walls shielded markets filled with spices, textiles, and gems. Temples rose from the dust, dedicated to deities long forgotten, while camels laden with goods crossed the dunes on roads lined with carefully constructed way stations. Unlike later kingdoms that relied on conquest, Marin thrived on commerce. Its wealth came from organizing and protecting trade, creating oases of culture in the most unforgiving terrain. But as Roman control expanded and sea routes bypassed Arabia's land routes, Marin faded. The desert reclaimed the roads. The temples crumbled. And yet, beneath the starlit silence of the Yemeni desert, one can still feel the weight of lost wealth and the scent of ancient incense drifting across the sands. The kingdom of Wardain, the desert librarians. Tucked into the rocky Adrar plateau of Mauritania, the ancient town of Wardain was once a desert kingdom of scholars and traders. From the 11th to 16th centuries, it thrived as part of the larger trans-Saharan trade routes, ferrying salt, gold, and manuscripts across a sea of sand. Wardain's most astonishing treasure wasn't gold, it was books. Thousands of manuscripts, covering everything from astronomy to medicine, were kept in stone libraries built to withstand the heat and dust. The town was a beacon of knowledge, connected spiritually and academically to Timbuktu and other desert centers. The harsh desert was not a void but a corridor of goods, ideas, and Islamic scholarship. Sandstone homes huddled together, their thick walls keeping out the relentless sun. People read by oil lamp, listened to poetry under desert moons, and discussed philosophy in shaded courtyards. Eventually, trade shifted and the kingdom waned. Many of the manuscripts disappeared, but some remain, hidden in private homes, protected by families for generations. In Wardain, the desert is a keeper of secrets. Beneath the sand lies not just silence, but sentences, the echo of thought, of memory, of civilization. The Ghaznavid Empire, oasis warriors of the East. In the high deserts and mountainous steppes of what is now Afghanistan and eastern Iran, the Ghaznavid Empire rose in the 10th century as one of the earliest powerful Islamic dynasties in the region. Their founder, Sebuktigin, was a Turkic slave who rose to power and built an empire that blended desert survival with high art and architecture. Their capital, Ghazni, became a jewel in the dry landscape. Massive mosques, gardens, and libraries flourished within mud-brick walls. The Ghaznavids were patrons of Persian poetry, especially Ferdowsi, whose epic Shahnameth was completed under their rule. Though they ruled over dusty plains and high passes, the Ghaznavids were far from barbaric. Their cities were vibrant centers of learning, and their armies reached deep into the Indian subcontinent, bringing new ideas and forging cultural links between South and Central Asia. Eventually, internal strife and rival empires eroded their power. The once mighty Ghazni was abandoned, its towers sinking into sand and memory. Today, only a few minarets remain, weather-beaten and solitary, like sentinels keeping watch over a forgotten empire. The Kingdom of Aksum, desert kings with obelisks. Though best known for its fertile highlands, the Aksumite kingdom also reigned over vast stretches of desert in what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea. From the 1st to the 7th century CE, it was a powerhouse of trade, religion, and architecture, commanding desert ports along the Red Sea, such as Agilis. Aksum was unique, an African empire that minted its own gold coins, maintained trade with Rome, India, and Arabia, and constructed massive stone obelisks without the use of mortar or metal tools. The deserts they ruled were not lifeless, they were crossroads. Caravans flowed with ivory, ebony, spices, and slaves. And through it all, Aksum embraced Christianity, becoming one of the first major empires to do so. But as Islamic expansion changed trade routes, and environmental degradation wore down their lands, Aksum slowly declined. The grand obelisks still stand in silence, casting long shadows over dry grass, watching the desert slowly reclaim a once glorious realm. The Nabatean kingdom, lords of the red sand. Among the rose-colored cliffs of what is now Jordan, the Nabateans carved out one of the most visually striking kingdoms the ancient world has ever known. Flourishing between the 4th century BCE and 106 CE, the Nabatean kingdom built Petra, a city hewn directly into rock, where temples, tombs, and theaters glow pink in the desert sun. The Nabateans were masters of survival in an arid world. They engineered complex water collection systems, channeling rain from desert cliffs into underground cisterns. This allowed Petra to support tens of thousands of residents and passing caravans. Their wealth came from controlling key trade routes, especially those that carried spices, incense, silk, and precious stones between Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. Their culture blended Hellenistic, Roman, and Arab elements, creating a unique artistic and spiritual legacy. But after Roman annexation, Petra's influence waned. Earthquakes and shifting trade patterns turned the grand stone city into a ghost town. For centuries, it lay hidden, its carved facades guarded by wind and silence. Even now, as tourists marvel at the treasury's grandeur, the deeper desert still holds secrets of a kingdom carved from stone and shaped by sand. The Khwarezmian Empire, desert defenders of Central Asia. Straddling the deserts of Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and northern Iran, the Khwarezmian Empire rose to prominence in the 11th and 12th centuries as a formidable Islamic state. Their capital, Gorganj, stood like a beacon at the edge of the Karakum Desert, a thriving hub of science, culture, and diplomacy. Khwarezmian scholars were some of the brightest minds of the Islamic Golden Age. Libraries were stocked with manuscripts in Persian and Arabic. Markets hummed with goods from China and India. And yet, their desert location forced constant adaptation, from building canals to defending trade routes from bandits and rival powers. Tragically, their empire met a brutal end. When the Khwarezm Shah foolishly executed a Mongol envoy in 1218, Genghis Khan retaliated with overwhelming force. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara were razed. Gorganj, once a glittering jewel of the desert, was flooded and destroyed. All that remains today are ruins buried in sand, fragments of walls and pottery beneath skies that once watched over an empire of knowledge and pride. Their downfall reminds us of how quickly a desert kingdom can turn from thriving to forgotten. The Lihyanites, guardians of the Arabian sands. Before the rise of the famed Nabateans, the Lihyanite kingdom ruled large swaths of northwestern Arabia, particularly around the oasis of Dadan, modern Alula. From the 6th to 2nd centuries BCE, they controlled caravan trade routes and guarded the lifeblood of desert commerce, water, and safe passage. The Lihyanites left behind inscriptions in Dadanitic script, the forerunner of Arabic. Their temples, tombs, and statues were carved into sandstone cliffs, early echoes of the architectural traditions that would later blossom in Petra. Dadan was a vibrant town where camel caravans stopped to rest, trade, and worship. The kings of Lihyan likely collected tolls and offerings, establishing a centralized government in the midst of tribal lands. When the Nabateans rose, they absorbed the Lihyanite domain. Their monuments were forgotten, their names erased. But now, with archaeological efforts underway in Alula, their memory stirs again. Beneath the desert sun, lost inscriptions tell the stories of a kingdom that kept Arabia's secrets safe for centuries. The Ghorid dynasty, the desert architects of empire. High in the rugged deserts of central Afghanistan, the Ghorid dynasty emerged in the 12th century as a powerful force following the decline of the Ghaznavids. Their homeland, Ghor, was an unforgiving mountainous desert, dry, isolated, and often overlooked. But from this remote kingdom, the Ghorids launched a conquest that would shape the future of the Indian subcontinent. They were fierce warriors and visionary builders. The Ghorid leader, Muhammad of Ghor, spearheaded campaigns deep into northern India, paving the way for the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate. But back home in Ghor, they also constructed grand mud-brick fortresses, mosques, and caravanserais in the heart of dry, barren valleys. The Ghorids fostered a multicultural society, blending Persian, Indian, and Central Asian influences. Though not as opulent as their predecessors, they ruled with a quiet power born from harsh terrain and harder choices. Eventually, Mongol invasions and internal decay led to their collapse. Today, Ghor is a land of crumbling towers and scattered bricks, overlooked by many, yet once the launching pad of empires. Its desert winds still echo the hoofbeats of a dynasty that changed history and then vanished into the dust. The Ubar civilization, the Atlantis of the sands. Our final tale in this journey through desert empires is perhaps the most mysterious of all, Ubar, the so-called Atlantis of the sands. Described in ancient Islamic texts and Bedouin lore, Ubar was said to be a rich city buried beneath the sands of Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, one of the most desolate deserts on earth. Legends described Ubar as a place of towers and treasures, a city punished by God for its arrogance and excess. For centuries, it was dismissed as myth. But in 1992, using satellite imagery, archaeologists uncovered ancient tracks converging on a site in Oman, a collapsed limestone cavern where a fortified settlement once stood. This site, Shiza, may have been a key stop on the frankincense trade route. Whether it was Ubar or not, it showed evidence of advanced desert living, wells, storage rooms, and protective walls. Over time, the water dried, the land collapsed, and Ubar was consumed by the sands, just as the legends claimed. Today, explorers stand in that dust-blown silence and wonder. How many more cities lie hidden beneath the dunes? How many more forgotten kingdoms wait to be rediscovered? In stone, in story, or in sleep. Riverine realms, kingdoms along forgotten waters. Not all great kingdoms were built on vast plains or beneath golden sands. Some rose beside mighty rivers, arteries of life that nurtured empires and civilizations before vanishing into history. These were the riverine realms, ancient powers that flourished along winding waters, where trade, agriculture, and culture flowed like the currents themselves. Their greatness may have ebbed with time, but their echoes still drift across marshes, valleys, and silted shores. Let's wander down these forgotten riverbanks, where life once thrived, and empires quietly faded. The Kingdom of Silla, guardians of the Nakdong River. In the southeastern corner of the Korean peninsula, nestled between rolling hills and the Nakdong River, the Kingdom of Silla flourished for nearly 1,000 years. Founded in 57 BCE, it was one of Korea's famed three kingdoms, and the one that would eventually unify the peninsula under a single rule. Silla's power flowed from its strategic rivers, which provided not only fertile plains for agriculture but also vital trade routes linking the coast to the interior. The Nakdong River, calm and wide, carried goods and culture from inland towns to bustling port cities on the Sea of Japan. But what truly set Silla apart was its deep connection to Buddhism, art, and architecture. The kingdom built golden crowns, stone pagodas, and elaborate burial mounds, many of which still lie hidden beneath grassy hills. The city of Gyeongju, Silla's capital, became a hub of learning and beauty, sometimes called the Museum Without Walls. Eventually, political fractures and external pressures caused Silla's decline in the 10th century. The mighty river kept flowing, but its royal watches had faded into legend. Yet in the stillness of morning fog drifting across Gyeongju's fields, you might still sense the quiet legacy of a kingdom born from water and wonder. The Kingdom of Funan, the river traders of Southeast Asia. Long before the mighty Angkor rose in Cambodia, the land's first great kingdom, Funan, flourished along the Mekong River Delta, from around the 1st to the 6th century CE. This was a realm of river trade, where merchants, monks, and mariners from India, China, and beyond exchanged goods and ideas. Funan's cities were laced with canals, and its wealth came from controlling access to the sea. The Mekong was both highway and heartbeat, allowing ships to pass deep into the interior. Indian influence gave rise to early Hindu-Buddhist temples, Sanskrit inscriptions, and new systems of governance. But what made Funan so powerful also made it vulnerable. Its openness to the world meant it absorbed both knowledge and rivals. Eventually, internal strife and foreign invasions weakened its hold. By the 7th century, the once bustling ports fell silent, overtaken by the rising kingdom of Chenla. Today, most of Funan lies beneath rice fields and silt. Its ports are lost to time, but a fragment of statue here, a faded Sanskrit tablet there, whispers of river kings who once ruled the tides of early Southeast Asia. The Illyrian kingdoms, along the Emerald Drin. Long before the Roman Empire extended its grip into the Western Balkans, the region was a patchwork of Illyrian tribes and kingdoms, some of which flourished along the banks of the Drin River in modern-day Albania. These ancient realms, loosely organized and fiercely independent, held sway over highland passes and fertile river valleys. The Illyrians were known for their warrior culture, but their proximity to the Adriatic and inland rivers allowed trade to flow, especially in salt, metals, and cattle. The Tolantii and Ardii were among the strongest riverine powers, at times challenging even Macedon and Rome for dominance. Despite their riverine setting, they left few permanent structures. Their culture was passed orally, and their settlements built in wood and clay. As Rome expanded, the Illyrian resistance was eventually crushed in a series of brutal campaigns during the 2nd century BCE. Today, the green waters of the Drin still glide silently through narrow gorges, past villages unaware of the mighty clans that once camped along its shores. The Illyrians, once feared and free, are now but a ripple in the water's memory. The Xia dynasty, China's river-born myth. The Xia dynasty, often regarded as China's first dynasty, is a blend of history and legend. Said to have ruled from circa 2070 to 1600 BCE, it rose in the Yellow River Basin, where early agriculture, bronze casting, and state formation took root. The Yellow River, often called China's sorrow, gave life but also took it away with massive floods. The earliest tales of the Xia center on Yu the Great, a cultural hero who tamed the river's floods by dredging channels and controlling the waters. His efforts earned him the mandate to rule, and thus the Xia dynasty began. Though archaeological evidence remains scarce and debated, remains of ancient cities like Urlitu may support the Xia's existence. Massive palatial structures and ritual vessels hint at organized governance along these riverbanks. The Xia eventually gave way to the Shang dynasty, and over time, their deeds became legend. But even if myth, the stories of river conquest, early kingship, and flood control offer profound insights into how water shaped civilization. And somewhere beneath the muddy loam of the Yellow River, the Xia's truth may yet lie buried. The Hittite Empire, lords of the Halys River. Rising in central Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, the Hittite Empire controlled vast territories around the Halys River, known in antiquity as the Marasantia. From around 1600 to 1178 BCE, they built a powerful kingdom rooted in law, war, and complex diplomacy. Their capital, Hattusa, stood high on a rocky hill near the river, surrounded by thick walls and sacred shrines. The Halys provided fresh water, agriculture, and a natural defense barrier, making it both lifeline and shield. The Hittites were brilliant administrators. They created treaties with Egypt, such as the Treaty of Kadesh, developed legal codes, and carved their history into stone. Their gods were many, and their rituals deep, with river ceremonies playing key roles in religious life. But after centuries of strength, the empire fell during the Bronze Age collapse, a mysterious event that saw great civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean vanish almost overnight. The Halys still flows through Anatolia, now known as the Xlamak, winding past farms and forgotten stones. Somewhere along its banks, the Hittite kings may still dream beneath buried thrones and broken temples. The Kingdom of Kush, Nile's southern guardians. Far upstream from the glories of ancient Egypt, nestled in what is now modern-day Sudan, the Kingdom of Kush thrived for over 1,000 years along the upper Nile River. While Egypt often stole the spotlight in historical records, Kush was its southern shadow, and sometimes even its master. Centered around the cities of Napata and later Meroe, Kush developed a distinct culture that blended native African traditions with Egyptian influences. Their kings built pyramids, smaller but often steeper than their northern neighbors, and crafted temples to gods both familiar and local. The Nile was everything. It provided water in a harsh desert, connected the kingdom to Egypt and the Mediterranean, and ensured fertile harvests even in arid lands. It was both a physical and spiritual highway. Perhaps the most striking chapter in Kushite history came in the 8th century BCE, when the 25th dynasty of Egypt was born, and it was Kushite. These black pharaohs ruled over all of Egypt for nearly a century, bringing stability and cultural revival. By the 4th century CE, the Kushite kingdom faded, pressured by desertification, trade shifts, and internal decline. Today, the remnants of their civilization lie silent under the sun, their pyramids standing still above the ancient Nile, guardians of a greatness the world nearly forgot. The Aksumite Empire, between rivers and Red Sea. In the highlands of present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, bounded by seasonal rivers and the shimmering Red Sea coast, rose the mighty Aksumite Empire. Active from around the 1st to the 10th century CE, Aksum was a crossroads of trade, culture, and early Christianity. Unlike river-dependent empires of the lowlands, Aksum's rivers were short and swift, tributaries of the Nile and local streams that brought life to terraced farms and royal cities. Though not navigable like the Nile or Tigris, These waterways sustained agriculture and served as spiritual sources in a mountainous terrain. Aksum minted its own coins, traded ivory, spices, and gold with the Roman world, and was one of the first major empires to adopt Christianity in the 4th century. Its monumental stelae, towering stone obelisks, still stand in quiet grandeur today. As Arab-Muslim powers rose and trade routes shifted, Aksum's influence waned. The capital retreated into the highlands, and over time, its stone cities crumbled into quiet. Yet in the trickling streams of Ethiopia's green valleys, the soul of Aksum still lingers, a kingdom carved between rivers and rock, steadfast through time. The kingdom of Ayutthaya, the last Christian bastion on the Nile. Deep in Upper Nubia, just south of Egypt and Kush, rose Ayutthaya, a medieval Christian kingdom that blossomed between the 6th and 16th centuries CE. Centered near modern Khartoum, where the Blue and White Nile meet, Ayutthaya was the southernmost of the Nubian Christian states. Its rivers were lifelines, especially the Blue Nile, which cut through mountains and carried water from Ethiopian highlands. Ayutthaya's people farmed its floodplains, built churches of stone and mud, and preserved a culture of learning and piety. Ayutthaya held out long after neighboring Christian kingdoms fell to Muslim expansion. But isolation, internal decline, and waves of migration eventually wore it down. By the early 1500s, it collapsed, leaving behind little more than scattered ruins and mysterious chronicles. Today, few outside the region know Ayutthaya's name. But for centuries, it stood quietly at the river's bend, a final flicker of an ancient Christian tradition along Africa's greatest waterway. The kingdom of Srivijaya, rulers of the river and sea. In the dense rainforests of Sumatra, nestled between tidal rivers and sprawling estuaries, the Srivijaya Empire rose to prominence as a riverine and maritime kingdom that dominated Southeast Asia between the 7th and 13th centuries. With its capital near Palembang, where the Musi River meets the sea, Srivijaya grew rich by controlling choke points of regional trade, especially the Malacca Strait. But it wasn't just a sea empire. The empire's inland rivers acted as arteries of communication and culture, reaching deep into the forests. Srivijaya was a center of Mahayana Buddhism, attracting scholars and pilgrims from India and China. Monasteries, inscriptions, and statues dotted the riverbanks, turning the delta into a sacred landscape. The kingdom eventually fell victim to shifting trade routes, regional rivals, and a devastating Chola invasion from South India in the 11th century. Its cities were overtaken by jungle, and its monuments buried in silt. Yet even now, as the Musi River meanders through modern Palembang, echoes of Srivijaya remain, in folklore, in scattered ruins, and in the patient flow of water that once bore monks and merchants toward greatness. The Mississippian culture, river kings of ancient America. Long before European contact, the heart of North America was home to a flourishing civilization known as the Mississippian culture, which reached its height between 800 and 1600 CE. Centered along the Mississippi River and its tributaries, this network of chiefdoms built massive earthen mounds, complex societies, and trade routes stretching across thousands of miles. At its zenith stood Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis, with a population perhaps exceeding 20,000, larger than London at the time. The city's Monk's Mound remains the largest prehistoric earthen structure in the Americas. The rivers were lifelines. They brought fish, fertile soil, and mobility. Goods from as far as the Great Lakes, the Gulf Coast, and the Rockies were traded here: copper, shells, obsidian, and more. Ritual and ceremony were tied to water, sky, and seasonal rhythms. No single kingdom ruled all of Mississippian America. It was a web of powerful cities and alliances, many of them centered on rivers. By the time European settlers arrived, these societies had mysteriously declined, likely due to environmental pressures, disease, and internal conflict. The mounds remain, silent as the mist above the river at dawn, holding secrets of a people who once ruled from the water's edge. The Garamantes, desert architects of the Sahara. Far from the fertile river valleys, deep in the heart of the Sahara Desert, lay the kingdom of the Garamantes. Flourishing between roughly 500 BCE and 700 CE in what is now southwestern Libya, the Garamantes thrived despite harsh sands and scarce water. Their secret? Ingenious underground irrigation systems called fogaras, long tunnels that tapped deep aquifers, bringing precious water to surface farms. This allowed the Garamantes to build cities, grow crops, and sustain a population in one of the world's most unforgiving environments. Trade caravans connected them to Mediterranean ports, sub-Saharan Africa, and the wider ancient world, making Garamantes a hub of commerce and culture. Over time, changing climate conditions and desert expansion forced the kingdom into decline. Today, their ruins lie buried beneath the sands, whispering tales of resilience and adaptation in a forgotten desert empire. The Nabateans, masters of rock and trade. The Nabatean kingdom, centered around the stunning city of Petra in modern-day Jordan, flourished from the 4th century BCE to the 1st century CE. Nestled between rocky cliffs and desert sands, the Nabateans became legendary for their architectural ingenuity and control over vital trade routes. Though lacking major rivers, the Nabateans mastered water collection through rock-cut channels and cisterns, harvesting every drop of scarce rainfall. This allowed Petra to thrive as an oasis city and trading center on the caravan routes linking Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. Their carvings and tombs etched into rose-colored cliffs have endured for millennia, standing silent yet eloquent. As Roman influence grew and trade routes shifted, the Nabatean kingdom faded. Petra, once bustling, became a lost city buried by sand, rediscovered only in modern times, reminding us how kingdoms can vanish without a trace. The Hittites, empire buried in Anatolian dust. In the highlands of Anatolia, modern Turkey, the Hittite Empire ruled between roughly 1600 and 1178 BCE. Known for their early use of iron and formidable chariots, the Hittites established a powerful kingdom that clashed with Egypt and Babylon. Though the great rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates flowed nearby, the Hittites' power center lay amid dry plateaus and hills. Their cities rose around springs and smaller water sources, proving that kingdoms could flourish even beyond the largest rivers. The empire's downfall came suddenly, a collapse intertwined with mysterious sea peoples, internal strife, and shifting alliances. The once mighty Hittite capital, Hattusa, was abandoned, its ruins slowly swallowed by dust and time. Today, these ruins speak softly of a kingdom that helped shape ancient history yet slipped quietly into obscurity. The kingdom of Saba, the queen of Sheba's realm. In the rugged highlands of modern Yemen, along arid valleys and ancient trade routes, the kingdom of Saba rose as a wealthy and mysterious civilization from roughly 1000 BCE to 275 CE. Famous in legend as the realm of the Queen of Sheba, Saba controlled vital incense and spice trade routes between Africa, Arabia, and the Mediterranean. Despite little rainfall, they built sophisticated dams and irrigation systems, transforming desert lands into fertile fields. The Marib Dam, an engineering marvel of its time, regulated seasonal floods and supported agriculture, helping Saba to thrive for centuries. The kingdom eventually fragmented due to shifting trade routes and internal conflicts. Its grandeur faded beneath desert sands, leaving only ruins and stories to hint at its former glory. The Olmecs, mysterious builders of Mesoamerica. The Olmec civilization, active from roughly 1500 to 400 BCE along the Gulf Coast of Mexico, is often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Known for colossal stone heads and intricate jade carvings, the Olmecs built cities amid rivers and coastal wetlands. The rivers of the area, the Coatzacoalcos and others, provided fish, transport, and fertile floodplains. The Olmecs harnessed these waterways to support complex societies, ritual centers, and trade networks. Though the Olmec heartland faded around 400 BCE, their influence permeated later cultures like the Maya and Aztec. Their legacy survives in stone and myth, buried beneath centuries of soil and jungle growth, a forgotten kingdom born of rivers and ritual. The Khmer Empire, waterborne builders of Angkor. In the dense forests and floodplains of Cambodia, the Khmer Empire flourished from the 9th to the 15th centuries CE. Centered on the vast temple complex of Angkor, it was one of the largest pre-industrial cities in the world. The Khmer were masters of water management. Their sophisticated system of canals, reservoirs, barrages, and moats controlled seasonal floods and sustained rice agriculture. Rivers like the Tunnel Sap and Mekong fed these waters, turning the landscape into a dynamic aquatic tapestry that supported millions. The empire's decline remains partly a mystery, with theories ranging from environmental degradation to warfare. Today, the silent temples stand as monumental relics of a civilization deeply connected to its rivers and water. The Kingdom of Kushan, crossroads of Central Asia. The Kushan Empire, spanning parts of modern Afghanistan, Pakistan, and northern India from the 1st to 3rd centuries CE, thrived along rivers like the Indus and Kabul. A vibrant melting pot of cultures and religions, Buddhist, Zoroastrian, and Hellenistic influences mingled here. The Kushans controlled vital segments of the Silk Road. The rivers sustained agriculture and trade, anchoring cities that connected east and west. Though powerful in their era, the Kushans fragmented amid internal strife and external invasions. Their ruins lie beneath layers of Central Asian dust, but their impact on trade, religion, and art echoes through history. The Kingdom of Kushite Nabatea, Nubia's forgotten frontier. Beyond the more famous Nubian kingdoms, Nabatea stood as a lesser-known Christian kingdom from the 4th to the 7th century CE in northern Sudan and southern Egypt, along the Nile. Its people built fortified towns and churches along riverbanks, blending indigenous and Byzantine influences. Nabatea served as a buffer state against desert nomads and expanding Islamic powers, holding on to its Christian identity until absorbed into neighboring realms. Though overshadowed by larger neighbors, Nabatea's history survives in inscriptions and scattered ruins, whispering of a frontier kingdom clinging to the Nile's life-giving waters. The Tarim Basin kingdoms, oasis states of the Silk Road. Scattered across the vast deserts of Xinjiang in northwest China, the Tarim Basin kingdoms flourished between 200 BCE and 900 CE. Cities like Kasha and Kucha thrived at desert oases fed by rivers flowing from nearby mountains. These kingdoms were vital Silk Road hubs, connecting east and west. Despite their remote location, they nurtured Buddhism, trade, and culture amid arid landscapes. Many of their ruins lie buried under shifting sands, forgotten yet foundational in the tapestry of Silk Road history. The Kingdom of Kushanid, a forgotten dynasty of Central Asia. Emerging after the Kushan Empire, India in the 4th to 6th centuries CE. With rivers like the Jhelum and Chenab flowing through their lands, they maintained important trade routes and Buddhist cultural centers. Though short-lived and often eclipsed by more famous empires, the Kushanids played a vital role in preserving knowledge and trade between East and West. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest story. Long before most recorded histories, in ancient Mesopotamia, there was a tale that captured the imagination of countless generations, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This story, etched on clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, recounts the adventures of a king searching for immortality. Gilgamesh's journey was one of friendship, loss, and the pursuit of meaning in a transient world. His quest mirrors human struggles against fate and the inevitability of death, themes that resonate across cultures and time. Though his kingdom, Uruk, eventually faded into the sands of Iraq, Gilgamesh's legend lives on, reminding us that even forgotten kingdoms leave behind stories that shape our understanding of life itself. Stonehenge, mysteries written in megaliths. Rising from the windswept plains of southern England, Stonehenge stands as an enduring mystery from the prehistoric past. Built in several phases from around 3000 BCE to 2000 BCE, this circle of towering stones has fascinated and baffled historians and archaeologists alike. What was Stonehenge's purpose? Astronomical calendar, ceremonial site, or spiritual gateway? Perhaps all three. While the builders' names and culture have been lost, their work continues to draw millions, casting shadows of ancient ritual and cosmic wonder. A silent monument to a forgotten kingdom of people who mastered stone and sky. The legend of Atlantis, myth or memory. The story of Atlantis, described by Plato as a powerful island kingdom lost beneath the waves, has captivated imaginations for millennia. Though many consider Atlantis a myth, some historians suggest it could reflect a real ancient civilization destroyed by natural disaster. Perhaps the Minoan civilization devastated by the eruption of Thera. Whether fact or fable, Atlantis embodies humanity's fear of losing all we cherish and the hope that lost knowledge might someday be reclaimed. Its legend remains a cautionary tale etched into the collective memory of forgotten kingdoms swallowed by time and tide. The Mayan codices, books of forgotten knowledge. The ancient Maya civilization left behind remarkable cities, intricate calendars, and hieroglyphic writing carved on stone. But few survive more hauntingly than their rare codices, folded bark paper books containing sacred knowledge, rituals, and history. Many codices were destroyed during Spanish conquests, erasing centuries of Maya wisdom. Those that remain offer glimpses into a civilization that understood astronomy, mathematics, and the cycles of time with incredible sophistication. The Maya's written heritage, fragile and fragmentary, whispers from the shadows of forgotten kingdoms across the jungles of Central America. The Rosetta Stone, unlocking ancient voices. Discovered in 1799, the Rosetta Stone was the key to decoding Egyptian hieroglyphs, bridging the past and present. Inscribed in 3 scripts, it unlocked the language of pharaohs and priests, revealing histories that had been lost for nearly 2 millennia. The stone's inscriptions, carved during the Ptolemaic period, helped resurrect the voices of a kingdom long silent. Its discovery transformed understanding of ancient Egypt and the broader tapestry of human civilization, proving how a single artifact can revive the stories of forgotten kingdoms. The Terracotta Army, guardians of an emperor's legacy. Beneath the soil near Lebanon, China, lie thousands of life-sized terracotta warriors, silent sentinels meant to protect Emperor Qin Shi Huang in the afterlife. This army, buried around 210 BCE, reflects the power and ambition of a dynasty that unified much of China for the first time. Despite the dynasty's eventual fall, the Terracotta Army preserves the memory of a forgotten kingdom's grandeur and the desire for immortality. Their solemn ranks remind us how history is often safeguarded by art and ritual, echoing through millennia. The Dead Sea Scrolls, secrets of an ancient faith. Hidden in desert caves near the Dead Sea for over 2,000 years, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in the mid-20th century, revealing sacred texts of Judaism and early Christianity. These scrolls offer unparalleled insight into the beliefs, practices, and politics of ancient religious communities during the Second Temple period. The scrolls' preservation was a miracle of arid climate and hidden caves, enabling the voices of forgotten sects and kingdoms to reach us today. They illustrate how religion, culture, and history intertwine in the fragile survival of written memory. The Inca Quipu, knots telling forgotten stories. Without a written alphabet, the Inca Empire relied on a complex system of knotted cords called quipu to record data, communicate, and govern their vast Andean realm. Each knot and color conveyed information on population, resources, and events. Despite the loss of full understanding of quipu, these cords stand as a testament to an empire that thrived in rugged mountains through innovation. The quipu embodies how forgotten kingdoms encoded their legacies in forms beyond words, challenging us to rediscover their stories through alternative languages. The Etruscans, Italy's lost civilization. Before Rome's rise, the Etruscans dominated much of central Italy, shaping culture, religion, and art in the first millennium BCE. Their language remains partially undeciphered, and many of their cities lie buried beneath modern towns. Though absorbed into Roman society, the Etruscans influenced Rome's development profoundly. Their tombs and artifacts reveal a civilization both mysterious and rich, a forgotten kingdom whose echoes endure beneath Italy's landscape. The Viking sagas, stories of Norse kingdoms. The Viking Age, late 8th to early 11th centuries, gave rise to epic tales called sagas, blending history, legend, and myth to record the deeds of Norse kings and heroes. These oral stories, later written down, preserve memories of kingdoms across Scandinavia, Greenland, and beyond. Though many Viking settlements vanished or evolved, the sagas keep alive the spirit of exploration, conflict, and survival. They are a bridge between forgotten Viking kingdoms and the modern world's understanding of northern history.